All right, friends, welcome back to another episode of the Strong Life Podcast. I'm here with my friend, Ryan Michler from Order of Man Podcast, and on Instagram at Ryan Michler. Good friend of mine. We got together about 2 years ago, 2 years and 1 month prior to, the craziness going on in the world. And man, dude, I really miss that. Maine was so beautiful. I miss it. It's beautiful.
It's beautiful. We loved having you up here. I can't believe it's been 2 years though, man.
Yes.
It's like a lot has happened over the past 2 years, but I was telling my wife that you and I were going to be having a conversation this morning, and she's like, "Oh, make sure you tell him I said hi." And
yep.
I know all the kids miss you. We had a great time together out here. So we've had a lot of people over in the past couple of years just because of the nature of my work. But I got to tell you, like you have been one of our favorite guests, and I can't wait to have you back up here again, man.
I felt your family was just so welcoming, and your kids just, I think I remember telling you that I struggle with going away and taking trips kind of for myself and then not being with my kids. But I get to your house, your kids welcome me right away. They just reminded me of being around my kids, just sweet, all heart. It was awesome. And you guys were fairly new to being moved into Maine at that time, correct?
Yeah, I can't remember what time of year you came, but yeah,
we came the end of July.
Oh yeah, so we got here
25 months ago
in June. So
2 months.
You came like a month or two after we got out here. Yeah, and then we had an event, and I think maybe a month after you had left, or even a couple of weeks. But yeah, it's like we're fast paced around here. We move quick.
Oh, yeah. It's been amazing to see the evolution of the barn, because I saw your barn before you really even sweeped it out.
That's right. Yeah, yep. It had good bones, as they say, but it needed a lot of work. So we've been pouring a lot of blood, sweat, and tears into tearing out walls and redoing the floor and shoring up the foundation and putting the lighting in and just really getting it to the point that we want to have it so that we can run our events the way that we want to run them.
The creation side of things seems to really inspire you. And I think that's, where a lot of men kind of fall off, is they get to a point where it's kind of same old routine where it's go to work, come home, and just, punch the clock. And it's been really cool to see your barn evolve, the things that you've created, even the things in your family. So your oldest son has even started his own business. You've evolved with your fitness, doing jujitsu with the guys at Origin. And I, feel me personally should have evolved a longer time ago. Whereas like this past year, I kind of rebranded my certification, breathed all new life into it. And I remember saying to myself, I should have flipped that switch long ago when I was feeling that. What, keeps your brain going in that creative and driven way that allows you to keep growing and evolving? What do you think are a few of the key elements to being able to grow and evolve as a man?
One of the things that I think about as you're talking about that is this concept of vision and being able to visualize what the future could potentially hold. So to go back to the barn, I think a lot of people would have looked at that barn and thought, "Whoa, this is really cool. I would like to have something like this could be, but like that's too much work." And I understand, because it's been a lot of work, and I thought that too. But I also saw the potential in it, and the vision I had for how the barn would turn out is what keeps me fueled to keep going when I don't feel like it, or it's discouraging, or it's costing a little bit more money than maybe I think it should, or that was originally told to me. But I visualized what that could look like. But you can do the same thing in your life. Maybe you're 50 pounds overweight. Are you visualizing? Are you spending time thinking about what the man or woman would be, and what he or she would look like, how he or she would feel 50 pounds lighter, how much energy you'd have, the relationships that you develop and foster and nurture, what your mentality and your mental clarity and focus would look like? Really just focusing on what it could be so that you can get past discouraging times. Because look, and I've gone through a transformation years and years ago. I was 50 pounds heavier than I am today.
That's right.
And it was hard to get started. And then it was discouraging along the path, right? Because we have setbacks and we have challenges and we have life and we have patterns that we fall into. And so I was up and down and up and down and discouraged and excited and optimistic. And then I was deflated. But really thinking about the long-term vision and what that could possibly look like has been a huge thing for me. But I also just really enjoy, like you said, the creation process or the rebuilding process. You know, when I look at somebody or even myself and I'm beat up and downtrodden and kind of in the dumps, I mean, that's actually a pretty interesting time because now you get to build. I love the building process. You know, I see the bricks behind you, you know, brick by brick. Somebody didn't just throw that wall together. Yeah. You know, when it comes to bricks, it's like you got to stack one, then the other, then the other, then the other. And it's cool to see that progress, really taking pride in the process and the journey along the way.
It's through experience, you start to come kind of to terms with the fact that anything worth having is going to take time. And even as a coach, now when I'll get an athlete who can't do one pull-up, but he's 13 or 14, I remind that kid, listen, I've trained hundreds of kids like you who through the next 4 or 5 years gain 80 to 100 pounds of muscle, go from 0 pull-ups to 20 pull-ups, but it's like brick by brick, week by week. And the consistency factor is obviously huge. So if I look at time, it seems like yesterday that I was up at your place in Maine, but that was 2 years and a month ago. So we're talking 25 months. And you mentioned losing 50 pounds. That simply would have been 1 pound every other week, slow and steady. That time is passing one way or another. And that's where when you had me on your podcast, I remember somebody had the question of how do I get started? And I said, do one thing. That's 100% more than 0. So if you just do 10 push-ups today, you know, every single day, now you're going 70 push-ups a week. You know, we're going 300 push-ups in a month. Now we got, you know, 300 or 3,600 push-ups in a year just by doing 10, by doing 10. So it's like these little things. I think also when you were going to do that first event, Ryan, you were going to have some of the guys coming to the event. They were showing up early to help you actually set up, clean out the barn a little more. I think you were going to raise the flag. They were coming in early, right? They offered to come in early to help out, correct?
Yeah. So we had that where we had a bunch of guys come in to help. You're right. We put up the flagpole because that was one of the first things we wanted to do to upgrade the property is put our 25-foot flagpole up.
Yes.
And then they came and swept and cleaned and things like that. And then last year we were going to hold another event like the first one. But there was some restrictions and some lockdowns and things like that because of the response with COVID. So we ended up nixing that event, but I did invite 12 guys who were going to come to the event out. And I said, look, guys, we're not doing the event, but I still want to invite you out. I'll feed you really well. I'll give you a place to stay. All you got to do is fly out here and get out here. And we're going to be spending 3 or 4 days just cleaning up the property. And I think if I remember right, I asked 12 guys, and I had about a handful of others if they could make it, but I asked 12 guys and every single one of them said, yes, yep, we'll be there. And they came out and we ripped floor out of the barn. A couple of guys were painting the back deck. We were clearing wood out in the field and out in the tree line. And so these guys went to work for like 3 days solid, just helping clean up the property and get it closer to where we wanted it. So yeah, I mean, we've got a lot of help. And that's also, there's a lesson there. And the lesson is that if you are moving and you have a vision and a goal and an idea and you're moving in that direction, you are going to inspire others. And other people want to be part of something, anything, whether it's productive or not, like everybody wants to be part of something. And if you can lead from the front by casting that vision, by sharing it with other people, by working towards that vision for yourself, by producing the results, by staying consistent, like you said a minute ago, other people are going to see that and they're going to want to be part of that. And so you can rally these people around a cause. That could be something as simple as changing the culture within your family. That could be changing the dynamics on your team. That could be a social movement, an issue that you see in society that needs to be addressed, and you can rally people around that. It could be an organization, a business, any facet of life. You can lead. People are looking for that leadership. And in a way, it's unfortunate, but it's the reality. People are looking for permission in a way. Like they won't necessarily go first, but Zach, if they see you or they see me or they say anybody who's listening to this podcast do something, that gives them just a little bit of a switch and think, oh, well, if these guys are doing it, like I could certainly do it. And then we, as the ones leading, have a moral obligation and responsibility to help foster that. So if somebody says to me, hey, Ryan, I've been really thinking about a podcast. Any tips? You know, I'm so busy. It's hard to do that one-on-one stuff, but I get that question so often. And I feel like I have a responsibility since I'm doing it and other people help me. So I've put together different resources that I could make available. So when somebody says, hey, how do I start a podcast? I can direct them to that link. Or, you know, somebody says, hey, you know, how do I lead my family well? Or how do I salvage my marriage? I put together the resources because I want to be valuable. I want to help people, and they clearly want to be on this mission. So we have a responsibility to help them if we have some knowledge or information or tools available.
Yeah. From a business side of things, I always tell coaches, we have a lot of coaches listening, and I've held, you know, an event specific for coaches. Then the fall after we hung out, I did an event called the Strong Life Experience, which was based on anybody who wanted to create and give and utilize their expertise to turn it into a business to support and help others. I said, you got to listen to what people ask. If they keep asking the same questions, you know, you need to create a solution for that question, or you know, right. It's viewed as a problem. What about with regards to the theme and the topics of your early events in Maine compared to now? Because you and I met before you know, things have really changed in our country politically. COVID has changed so many things. There's been, you know, the way I have worded this, Ryan, is I'm a little bit older than you, but I've worded this in this kind of way, is I've never seen such division in our country, because in my early 20s, 9/11 happened. We lived in central/North Jersey, where you could see the New York City skyline. I saw the cloud smoke. You know, I was teaching that day. I remember, you know, I was dating, you know, at the time, now married, but we were dating. And I remember we would go out, and my wife always said, she's like, I think people are kind of move out of your way because they think you're a cop and they really respect you. You know, I had like a buzzed head, and I was, I guess, muscular and whatnot. And those words resonate with me because it says to me, now people don't respect the cops, and they look at police and first responders as the enemy. And it actually really breaks my heart to see that. So I'm just wondering, like, what has the way the world has kind of changed, especially since you've gotten to Maine? Has it changed the theme behind Order of Man? Has it changed the theme of these live events, or what men have asked they want to hear you speak about, or what kind of guests they want you to bring about? What has evolved and changed since we've connected 2 years ago?
Yeah, you know, I've really doubled down with my events on the idea of our moral responsibility and obligation. Like I said earlier, that isn't something I always hit on. It was more skills based in the past, like do this skill, learn this skill, learn how to shoot, learn how to defend yourself. And you know, those things are important. Learn how to communicate effectively. Like all of that stuff is critical, and we still hit on those things. But anymore, we focus more on the mindset and the place that we're coming from, because I feel like if we have that component right, that we have a moral obligation to serve, that we want to lead effectively, that we have the responsibility to turn around and help up those behind us, get to where they want to go. I think if we get that right, then we can begin to fill in the blanks with, okay, what skills do I need to develop to do that? So a great example would be podcasting or conversations or interviewing. If I want to help as many people as possible, then it's paramount that I learn how to become a better conversationalist, because if I don't have that skill down, I can't reach as many people as I could. And therefore those individuals won't be served the way I feel we can serve them. Right. So if you get that component right, then everything else starts to trickle down from there. So we've spent a lot of time over the past several years really focusing on what are the lessons, what are the mindsets, what kind of foundation do we need to establish, and then we use our events and experiences and activities at these events as the platform to be able to teach these types of things. So jiu-jitsu is a great example. Every event that we've ever done had some element of jiu-jitsu built into it. And it used to be, be strong, be capable, defend yourself. And all of that is true. But now we're starting to work in more conversations like, what did you learn about trying to bulldoze the guy right next to you who's just as big and just as strong and maybe more skilled than you? And a lot of these guys might say, well, I realized I can't use my strength because this guy's just as strong, if not stronger than me. Yes, that's exactly right. So what should you do? Well, maybe you don't bulldoze everything. Maybe there's better ways to approach not just jiu-jitsu and the opponent next to you, but maybe there's a better way to approach life. You can't strong arm or muscle your way through everything. That maybe there's a different approach with your mindset or the way that you exhibit some level of empathy so that you can produce better results. So all of our activities, although they're very similar, they all tie back into a critical mindset that's going to serve these guys, not just on the mats or in the gym or wherever, but throughout life, which I think is more important. Being strong, for example, and I might get blasted on this podcast because I'm saying this, being strong isn't the end in and of itself.
Correct.
Right. Like that is what that's a tool that you use to produce the real outcome, which is to lead your family well, yes, to lead yourself well, to lead your businesses and your community members. And being strong will help you do those things.
It's a vehicle is what I always
Correct.
describe it as.
Right. I agree with that.
I'm with you 100%. And my mistake, I often tell coaches, was in my early years when I coached athletes, it was all about winning, whatever sport you were in, winning this, winning that. There was never me taking these lessons and applying them to life. And I think the week after so from your house, I went to Lake George. We always have our big family vacation.
That's right. I remember you saying that.
Yeah. And so when I was in Lake George, somebody reached out to me about this new position where I'm a full-time strength coach at a high school. So every closeout and even every beginning of every training session, I'm talking certainly about the exercises, but tying them into the effort. And at the end, it's always like, it's excellence in everything we do, not just athletics, but your academics, your social life, your home life. I tell them that this eventually your sport will end. Football, basketball, and so on and so forth will end. And you need to be able to take these lessons and apply them to life. And that takes time. But like you've mentioned, jiu-jitsu especially has that parallel to life. Is there a theme for your upcoming event? One of my buddies is speaking at your event, Jay Giardulo. He's been to every seminar and certification I've held. Is there a overarching theme for this upcoming event?
We spent a lot of time thinking about that. We've done themes in the past. This time, really what we're going to do is we're going to focus on 4 crucial elements of life. And so Jay's covering the conditioning component, which is your physical health. So it's strength, it's stamina, it's rest, it's energy levels, it's all of this stuff. So what we're going to do is break this down into 4 quadrants. So we have calibration, which is getting right with yourself. So I talked about vision earlier, making sure that you're taking care of your emotional and mental and spiritual health. Then we have connection, which is the relationships that you have with other people. That's your wife, that's your children or your husband or your friends and your colleagues and your family and your coworkers and all of that. Then we have condition, which is what Jay's hitting on. I just mentioned that. And then the last is contribution. And contribution is really focused on becoming a man of value. So how do you add more to an environment than you take away? Because if you look at the difference, one of the primary differences besides, biological between boys and men is that a boy is going to consume more than he produces. right? And so take this with a grain of salt and take it as it's intended. I've got 4 kids. By their nature, they are consumptive, right? They require food and attention and energy and a roof over their head. This is what they require. And what they produce in return maybe doesn't quite meet that, but it's okay because we don't expect that to be the case, right?
Right.
But when a boy becomes a man is when he learns how to produce more than he consumes, meaning that he's learned how to not only take care of himself, but he's gotten so proficient at that he now has the capacity to take care of other people. So if you think about a husband, for example, I'll take myself. I can take care of myself, right? I can provide all the necessities I need of life. I can take care of myself mentally and emotionally. I can take care of my health. I can take care of my financial obligations and needs. And I can also, because I've become proficient at it, take care of my wife, take care of my 4 kids, take care of charitable organizations and things like that in the community that I'm responsible for. So really it's about learning how to produce more than you consume. And that's what that contribution quadrant is all about.
Yeah, it's something on my mind with the hurricanes hit New Jersey. And I'm thinking to myself, I got to find a way to get our athletes I got to organize something. We probably won't even be able to enter this one town. It's about 30 minutes from the school that I coach at, but that town, it's known to get flooded. So the areas in New Jersey that are near these rivers, the like homes exploded from electrical fires and just the flooding. And so this October, it was like right before Halloween. I think this is the 9-year anniversary. The town I live in is that little beach town got hammered by the hurricane, and the water devastated like a square mile. And you see it on the news, right? I had a friend, or I remember seeing like the hurricanes of New Orleans. You see it, but when you go from seeing something on TV to seeing it in front of your eyes, it hits you at a whole nother level. And so, there's families now without homes. And so what do? They sleep in tents in people's backyards. And then maybe somebody didn't have flood insurance. Maybe somebody's got babies, and now, they've lost everything. Cars have been lost. And so, this contribution this morning, I just was thinking to myself, we got to find a way to do something. So that's what's on my mind.
And when you do that, you're teaching these young men how to become men. You're teaching them to produce more than they consume, that it's not always about them, that they're going to take their energy and their time and their money and their other resources, and they're going to pour it into something and somebody that isn't them, and I love that you're talking about this concept of teaching these lessons through sports and being in the gym. I mean, look, I played high school sports, and I would say I was trying to be as objective as possible, slightly better than average athlete. I wasn't a superstar. I wasn't amazing. I wasn't going to go play college ball anywhere in any of the sports that I played in high school. And so when I was done with high school and I was 18 years old, that my time on the field or on the court or the baseball diamond, that ended for me. And what stayed with me was the lessons that I learned about life. And so I had great coaches who shared life stories and how to show up, like you're talking about, excellence in all things through a game. And look, I'm not going to tell you winning isn't important. That's why we play. We play to win, right? We play for keeps. Like we're here to perform. We're here to do our best. And at the end of the day, we want the scoreboard to be in our favor. We want to take state. We want to take that championship. That's why we're here, to be the best. But also there's other more important things that can be learned and siphoned out through games, which sounds really, really funny. But if you strip everything else away, that's what it is.
If you have a great coach, which is
true. Yes, true.
Our kids are you've got 4 kids. I've got 2 kids. We're all kind of around about that same age. And so I've had experiences where my kids don't have a great coach. I believe a great coach is going to go beyond the scoreboard. So let's say my kid, my daughter, my son, they win, but they play like shit, or they had shitty attitude or poor sportsmanship, or they kind of coasted to get the win. I'd like to see a coach address effort about how you've got to continue fighting and pushing, or the sportsmanship, is inappropriate, or, anything that goes beyond the points on the board. They said that, who's the famous coach, John Wooden at UCLA, who had those just, countless NCAA championships. They said he never screamed at the guys, but he taught them about little details, like how to properly put their socks on so they didn't get blisters in their feet, or making sure the shoelaces were double knotted, or the points on the scoreboard could be more, but if in your heart you did not truly put out your best effort, then you only won by points on the board. You didn't really win in life. So it was interesting to hear that. So I look for those things from a coach with my own kids. So if my kids lose in a team sport, my son plays baseball and basketball, how is that addressed? Or if somebody has poor behavior, how's that addressed? Or is it just blindsided if that's the best athlete on the team? I want to see that parallel, carry over to life. And so you're mentioning having some really great coaches as a kid. Now that's what I look for with my kids going into sports.
Yeah. There's another lesson here too. And if you're a parent, then please pay attention to this. And I think this is permeating more and more of society, whether it's just in schooling in general or on the field in some sort of sports. Is I'm noticing that there seems to be a lot of people who think that, well, it's if for example, Zach, you're my son's coach, that it's your responsibility to give my son all of these lessons. And while I think, yes, you do have a responsibility to do that, I don't get to abdicate my responsibility to do it.
Correct.
So my kids have been heavily involved in sports for probably at this point, 7-8 years or so. They've had great coaches and they've had not so great coaches. And you know what? Even the not so great coaches, because I, as a father, am involved, have actually been good learning experiences, because I've had to sit down and have conversations specifically with my boys and say, look, I know playing for your coach is hard. I know you guys don't like each other or you don't get along, but A, you made a commitment, so you got to finish. B, you're going to have to deal with difficult people in life. Yes. So let's figure that out. And then see, I'm involved, so I can teach those lessons. I can take whatever happened on the field and then apply it to the rest of life. But I see that with people who take their kids to public education and then they just dump them off. And they're like, well, how come my kid's teacher isn't teaching them that? How come you're not teaching them that?
Yes.
And it's going to be different, because I realize there's a lot of children who go to public education who are playing sports who don't have great role models in the home. And so I commend teachers for doing the best they can, but damn, we really got to spend a lot of time as parents and members of the community stepping in to help teach these life lessons that frankly, teachers are overwhelmed. You got 30, 35, 40 kids in a classroom. You're just stacked to the brim with red tape. And I've talked with school teachers who are like, Ryan, I just wish I could teach.
Oh yeah.
But they're doing red tape and all this stuff all the time instead of being able to actually spend one-on-one time or even group time with their children. It's frustrating. And it's really a disservice to our children that we're sending out into the world at some point.
Right. So one of the topics we were going to connect on that I wanted to chat with you is, I know your kids are homeschooled, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah.
So my two kids, my daughter started high school yesterday. They did like a first day for freshmen. I know.
Is your daughter your oldest?
Yep. She just turned 15 the end of August. So,
jeez.
That's also, I really look at time with the age of my kids. So my daughter just turned 15 a week ago. My son turned 13 the end of June. And it's like, whoa, this, time is really moving fast would be an understatement.
Yeah.
And I always think to myself, like, what would it look like if we homeschooled our kids? So what does it, I don't know how to even get into this conversation, but I see your oldest son, he started a podcast. He was helping you fulfill t-shirts. I think you guys have outsourced that since then, but he may have started.
No, he still does it. Him and my second son still do it.
Okay. Very, very impressive. And that's a lot. It's not like you're just getting a few shirts here and there. Talk to us about the I guess your wife is heavily involved with this, because I follow her Michler's in Maine, which is such a
Yep.
cool account. It's really makes me feel like I'm
Way
with you
better than
guys.
mine, man. Way
Yeah.
better than mine. She's got her garden and her bees and doing the homeschool stuff. And she's an
Yeah.
amazing woman. So
Let's
maybe I should call her up to talk about this because she does significantly more than I do. But
right.
yeah,
What do you
we made the decision years ago when we moved here that we would homeschool our children. I figured it was a good time to do it. And I remember the first day, she started at 9 or whatever time it was with the kids, and she wrapped up around noon, and she came up, or I went downstairs to get some lunch, and she's like, "Hey, we're all done." And I'm like, "Oh, cool. Like you're gonna have lunch break or whatever and go back." She's like, "No, we're done for the day." I'm like, "Nah, like, how could that be? It's only been 3 hours." She's like, "I don't know. We went through the entire curriculum," and I was convinced that she had missed something, or we hadn't done something right, or didn't get the right curriculum or something, right? And but now more and more, and as I've talked with more parents who homeschool their children as well, yeah, like there's a lot of inefficiencies in the school. We just talked about it, the red tape and the recess and the this and the that, and the assemblies and the changing from this class to this class and period to period. And there's just so much downtime. There's also the fact that and this sounds a little harsh, but if you're a parent, like this is something that you would consider, that your teacher has to slow down for some kids, and therefore your kids don't accelerate as quickly as they could, because you can't leave those kids behind. And so there's value in that. But if your kid is excelling, then it's not valuable for them. So it's pretty amazing how efficient it is. I realize that. And then what you can do to turn just daily experiences into schooling and learning and education, like running our store. Yeah, we're not talking about a couple shirts here and there. We're talking about dozens and dozens of orders every single day that my two oldest boys and sometimes my two little ones get involved with. Or we're going to go down to Boston, for example, and because I have work down there. A couple of years ago, I had the chance and opportunity to go visit Andrews Air Force Base and get a tour of Air Force One. And I told the guy who set it up for us, I said, "Look, I'll come down and speak to your guys on one condition, that my family can come with me." And I'm like, okay. So my kids researched Air Force One and everything about it. And then we actually went and did a tour inside and saw the planes and everything else. So there's so many little opportunities for learning if you're looking at it that way, outside of just traditional, right, outside of just your traditional public schooling.
That's the best learning. And I even think,
I think so.
How your kids are running, organizing the fulfillment. I've said to my kids, for me to run my business as at least with math, I simply need to add, subtract, multiply, divide, like a simple P&L sheet, nothing complicated. And I'd really, I think my kids would really thrive on these things. And I like your wife is gardening, and then physical education is your kids are outside playing, moving, which listen, I am in the public schools and I don't really agree with the way it is. And it's pretty wild with when you want something changed in the curriculum, you have to, like last year, I rewrote the curriculum to get strength and conditioning into the phys ed program, but I didn't call it strength and conditioning because the Board of Education has to vote on it. And so I knew that board members would say, well, who's this for? Is it just for athletes? And so I had to tweak the wording of it. But when I was in my final class of graduate school, I may have been like 24 years old. These guys were in their early 50s. They had left the public schools, opened a charter school, and we had read a book called Freedom to Learn. And the book was about breaking the rules of traditional learning. So these guys in the charter school, every year, each kid would get a year-long project of their choice. So if a kid was into movie production, let's say he wanted to research Martin Scorsese, they said every Wednesday was called Wacky Wednesday. Now, this is 18 years ago or so. They said the whole Wednesday, they're allowed to research any way they want. They could use the library, the computers, they could go to other students. The whole Wednesday was like a free-for-all day for them to learn and research any way they wanted. And then the end of the year, they would present, which reminded me of that movie, like Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, when they traveled back in time. But that's how I think learning is done best. For example, I want to segue into this, Ryan, and we could kind of bounce around. We were talking about these kind of gatherings, these events that you're holding. So a couple months ago, I don't recall exactly how long you went on a hunting trip. I saw Brandon, Lily. I think you guys were out in Hawaii. It looked like you went hunting, but also your family may have been. You kind of blended a trip together.
So I went to Molokai on Hawaii, the island of Molokai in Hawaii. And then I spent some time with Brandon and some other friends there for about 6 days, and we hunted. And then in the meantime, my wife and family flew to the Big Island. So when I was done hunting on Molokai, I flew to the Big Island and met him there and spent another 2 weeks. And my two oldest boys and one of their friends that came with us, we went hunting on the Big Island for an afternoon. So, but really at that point, it was more of a vacation for us, which we did. I think we did 3 or 4 years ago. So we just replicated that vacation that we had.
Amazing. So let's talk about, the importance of, for whoever's listening, but especially, I always tell my wife, you want to go do something, you never have to ask me. I love when I go down to Sorinex. I particularly love being down south. Something about it. I connect in people with South North Carolina. I had a great time with you. I think that's important for a lot of reasons. I think it's good for the soul. I think it's healthy to have some time away and engage with creative people. When I was with you, you took me to the employee kind of summer party for Origin, and I had met Brian and Pete. And that was, to me, very invigorating and inspiring and fun. And I had great conversations. So how did you guys organize that trip? And what even, like, sometimes you hear men say, oh, I can't really go away. What does the conversation look like when you speak to your wife, or let's say there's a guy listening, he wants to organize a trip with other men? How can we get other men to do that? Why do you feel it's important as well?
So you're talking about the trip to Hawaii with other guys.
Correct. Yeah. Going on that,
yeah.
It's like, looks like an adventure / expedition. That's important. I think it's also, I'm listening to Michael Easter's book, The Comfort Crisis. So, he talks a lot about going hunting and just being out in the wild. That is, I think, this comfortable life is destroying us. Everything, right?
Yeah,
I have food wherever I want. It's just so easy, so
convenient, so easy.
Correct.
Yeah, modernity is beautiful in a lot of ways, but also very destructive. So going away, that's crucial, right? You have to get away, not like to run away from your family or your obligations or responsibilities, but to recharge. And so that might be as simple as taking 1 or 2 nights a week and going to training or going to hang out with the guys, or having, fight night once a month where it's just the guys who come over and get together. And by the way, gals should be doing this too with women exclusively, men exclusively. And women, you guys go do your thing. Men, you guys go do your thing. And I noticed that I always feel invigorated. I come back with more focus and clarity, more capability of being involved and present for my family. When my wife wants to go do things, I used to be the guy who'd like make her feel bad, try to make her feel guilty for wanting to be away. And I wouldn't be blatant, just say it, but I would act in a way that made her feel bad or uncomfortable with leaving. And I realized that wasn't obviously good for her, but it also wasn't good for myself and my kids and the family. And so I really encourage her, if she wants to go on a vacation with her siblings, which she did about 6 months ago. I was very encouraging of that. Right. Or if she just wants to go to a beekeeping class that the community center is putting on, I encourage her to do that. And I say, hey, well, I've got the kids, I'm going to go do this. You don't have to worry about us. We're going to be good. 'Cause I want her to go do those things. So yeah, I find something. Maybe it's not a week-long hunt. Maybe it's just weekly. You go do something with other men who inspire you, motivate you, uplift you. And you're going to come back into the relationship better than you left. But really one of the keys is making sure that you're honoring her desire and her need to do that as well.
Mm-hmm. I agree. How did you guys go about setting up that hunting trip? I felt like it was a recent trip that I saw. So it was you, Brandon. I can't recall who else.
Yeah, so I've got a friend. I went and hunted in Hawaii about 3 or 4 years ago. And I have a friend who reached out to me and he said, hey, we've got this place on Molokai. They've got, I think, 2 or 3 spots available. Are you interested in having a lease on this property? I said, yeah, absolutely. So called a couple of buddies, made a couple of phone calls and said, hey, I'm going hunting. Here's when, and here's where, and here's what we're going to do. And here's how much it costs. And let's get after it. And I think, again, the first, 5 or 6 guys I called were like, yep, I'm in, no problem.
And do they provide the guns? How do you do they provide everything there, I guess?
We were bow hunting. So we brought our bows over. Just went out.
What bow? Because I'm looking at a Hoyt.
Yeah, Hoyt RX1, which is, outdated now, but it's still a great bow. But yeah, I've always really liked Hoyt. PSE makes great bows as well.
There's a local place near me that I was having a conversation with my buddy Johnny Wellborn. I was like, man, I have a Glock, and I have not gone and even taken like a firearms lesson, and just having this conversation is I need to get away from I'm too busy. Like, I need to take a day. I need to just, you got to have skin in the game. So I got to sign up for the lesson, pay for it. So now, and tell them, listen, can't refund me. Like, right. I need to go, but I also I want something that's also convenient. So having a bow would allow me to shoot in my gym. We have very small property around here. So I want something that I could do. I could go every night, I could ride my bike to my own gym, and I'd like to be able to just shoot whenever I want. Whereas with a gun, I got to go to the range and whatnot. I want to have something, boom, kind of right in my backyard. But I've had a lot of these thoughts of, I haven't gone hunting. I haven't gone shooting. And I think just the hectic nature of life wants me to have, my wife and I have been trying to find some property in that upstate New York area that we go to, but it's been tricky. But I think hopefully if real estate takes a little bit of a downturn, that might give us an opportunity to find something.
Yeah. The other thing too, you are busy. Like that's not a lie, right? I'm busy. You're busy. Everybody listening to this is busy. And so really it's just a matter of saying, hey, every second Tuesday of the month, I'm going to go to the shooting range, or on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, I'm going to stay a little late after practice at the high school or at the gym, and I'm going to shoot my bow. And you just build it into your schedule, because everybody has a schedule, right? Yep. You have a schedule, you schedule this, you put it on the calendar, you know what time you need to be at school, you know what time you need to be into the gym, you know what time you need to be home. Like, you all have a schedule. So just schedule it in and make it part of your schedule. You're right. You don't have to do everything. Like, you're talking about shooting every day, maybe you just shoot 2 or 3 days a week. And because that's what's going to work right now. Like, when I started jujitsu, in fact, I have a lot of guys who are like, I'm going to go every day and train every single day of jujitsu. And I'm like, well, hold on a second. Have you ever trained before? No. Okay. That probably is not in my experience. That's it. Just commit to going twice a week. Go on Monday and Wednesday, or whenever your classes are. And you know what? If you really like it, then maybe you work something else in. And so I've really enjoyed jujitsu. So I go Monday and Wednesday evening. My wife and I have talked about that. It's convenient. It works for our schedule. And I really like it. And so then I started going on Tuesday and Friday morning. Yes, so I go 4 days a week. And, I could probably go more, but that's what works for me. And occasionally I'll have a guy on Thursday be like, hey, I'm going to do a training session. You want to come? And I'll say yes or no based on my schedule. But 4 days a week, I'm doing it.
That's solid.
Very rarely do I miss those because I have things come up. But you just build it into your schedule over time, and it's more likely to get done. The other thing you said is about shooting. You're talking about going to take a class. Just invite a couple of buddies to go with you. You know, call up 2 or 3 buddies and say, hey, on Wednesday night, I'm going to the shooting class. It's a 2-hour class. Why don't you want to just come with me and hang out, and then we'll go grab a beer afterwards or whatever.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
And then that gives you an opportunity to learn and train, but also develop friendships that are important as well.
I think that stuff is so important. That's why I asked about these trips. And even I set up my last trip to go to Sornex. I said, I got to stop doing events only in my backyard at my gym.
Yeah.
You know, and I've been working with Sornex, buying stuff from them, became friends with Bert in the early 2000s. So close to 20 years now. Yep. And so it was probably the best certification I held. Jay came to that one. Yeah, it was just awesome. Bert came in, Pops came in. So quick question for you, Ryan, because we're going to close out in 10 minutes. So some things popped to my mind. I saw on your Instagram maybe a month ago, you were down, I think at the White House, Eddie Gallagher. You guys went and spoke to some people. Who else were you with, and what kind of happened, and how did that get organized? What are some of the topics you spoke about?
So we didn't actually speak to anyone. I went down and did a couple of podcasts. Okay. So I did a podcast with Manasquan Cawthorn, representative from North Carolina. Dan Crenshaw and I were scheduled to do a podcast, but he ended up getting, I was going to say stuck. Maybe stuck's not the right word, but he had some conflicting meetings with voting on the floor and things like that. Yep. So unfortunately, we didn't get to meet up. But then I saw that Eddie Gallagher was there, and he was on my podcast several months ago. So I just sent him a message. I'm like, hey man, I know you're in town. Like, let's go out to eat. Let's have a bite. And he's like, yeah, cool. I'll bring my wife. And so him and his wife and my wife and my kids and Brian Littlefield, who you met with Origin, and his wife, we all went out to dinner and just enjoyed each other's company. So yeah. So I just try to,
did you fly down or that's a bit of a trip?
Yeah, we drove down there last time, but this particular trip, we all flew down. And so, yeah, again, bringing the kids, let them, because Manasquan Cawthorn gave us a tour of the Capitol building, which is very, very cool. We got the behind the scenes tour of that with the kids. Yeah. So look, you just put yourself out there, right? And even on this hunting trip, I invite people that I like. I also invite people that I've never met before, that I'm interested in, learning from or getting to know or connecting with. And so for me, it takes a little bit more for me because I tend to be more introverted in nature, where I could go out to eat with my wife and kids and that's it. And not really have to like call anybody or go spend time with anybody else.
That you say you're introverted.
I am. I'm hesitant to use that label because I don't want to resign myself to behaving a certain way. But I can be completely comfortable in complete solitude and just working on a project around that. Like, I don't need that. And in fact, when I'm out in public, like meeting people and doing that, it tends to use and utilize a lot of my energy. And so I'm just, at the end of the night, I'm just exhausted, and I know there's people who get energized by that. I'm not one of those individuals, but I realize also that the connections I make and the relationships I form are good for me. And they're good for other people. And so it's just something that I consciously make the decision to do.
You're right. I can also be introverted, but when I'm around the people I connect with, like yourself, or when I go down to Sornex, I feel at home. And so, that's interesting. So last thing here, we touched upon it right before we recorded, and I had posted something on my Instagram, that quote that says, hard times create hard men create easy times or good times, and then good times create weak men. And most people are like, yes. And then of course somebody was like, no, that's BS. That's like, you're being you're pretending to be alpha, but you're really beta by not acknowledging, how other people might feel. And so of course on social, sometimes context is completely misconstrued, right? Because nobody really understands it. But I've always, I don't want to say always, but for quite a long time, I've always said comfort is the enemy. And so as things get so easy, it creates these hard times. And it's interesting to see like our country and even our world really so divided over this, over COVID. And people really can be quite, as we said earlier, like not so much in the mood to have a conversation, but more in the mood to just put their point out, but not really want to hear your point. So, you know, you told me long ago, I was like, man, I had gone through like this 2-week period of having a lot of negative comments on my Instagram, which is very rare, which is maybe a good thing, maybe not. And I was like, how do you deal with that? And you're like, I just delete and block right away if they don't want to engage in, you know, quality conversation versus just put out their side and that's it. So
Right.
what do you think of that quote, and just kind of, you know, where we are right now with so many people up in arms over, there's a lot of division in our world, so to speak. So let's talk about that quote first. What comes to mind when you think of that or hear it?
Yeah, I think that's hard. Right. The hard times do create good men because it's a requirement, right? If you're struggling, for example, if your family is going through something difficult, I'll share a small personal example. A couple of days ago, our 4-year-old German Shepherd started to have some real medical issues. And so the past 2 or 3 days have been very, very challenging. In fact, our dog right now is in the animal hospital with a neurologist because it looks like he's having some neurological issues. You know, so that's been a hardship. And I don't want to compare that to something that might be harder for somebody else and what they're going through, but this is just an example. And so I've had to be strong and resolute and empathetic and really wonder what my kids were thinking and ask them questions and see how they're doing and check in with them and my wife. And because it's a necessity, right? I have to do that because what's the alternative, right? The alternative is to feel bad for myself and wallow in my own self-pity and not show up and do this podcast and not show up for my family and maybe try to sedate myself with drugs or alcohol or pornography or these anything that we do. You know, but that's not an option for me. And so, but when things are good, then we have the luxury of not doing that, right? I don't have to show up. I don't have to check in. And that's what modern times have created for the most part. You know, like the worst day that people have is like they got cut off on the road, or, you know, somebody at McDonald's got their order wrong and put pickles on their cheeseburger when they didn't want it or didn't ask for it. It's like, that's their worst day and they blow up.
Correct.
And so because we live in this relative time of comfort and ease, it's not a requirement that we be good men. And so you were talking about this guy who posted and said, oh, these are just betas that don't want to address their feelings. No, nobody's saying that good men, like a definition of a good man, isn't somebody who understands his emotions or can't be empathetic. See, that's a misunderstanding on his part. He's saying what he's saying when he says that is he's saying that good men aren't emotional. And I don't think that's true. There's a couple of different things here. And then I've thought a lot about this lately because people say, oh, don't be emotional. Well, that's not even a possibility. Like, we're human beings. So you're going to be emotional, but there's two things at play here. There's your emotion and there's your response to your emotion. And so when people say don't be emotional, what they're usually saying is don't respond that way to your emotion. And sometimes that's appropriate. So for example, if I'm angry about something, you know, my day doesn't go as planned or something happens and I'm angry, that's the emotion. If I go punch a wall, the reaction, because I'm angry, is being angry wrong or is punching the wall wrong? The punching the wall was wrong. Now, if on the other hand, I'm angry about something, and because I'm angry, I work to figure out what's going on and get to the root of the issue and then correct it, don't you think that's an appropriate response to the anger? Yes. So what a good man, in fact, just what a mature adult man or woman would do is not subdue their emotions, not be emotional.
Right.
What they will do is they'll strive to understand what their emotion is telling them, what the cues are, and then come up with an appropriate response. Don't go punch the wall or somebody else. Instead, get to the problem and figure it out and come up with a solution. And I think that's what is part of what makes a man is that he can understand his experiences, his feelings, and then he can respond appropriately to produce desirable outcomes for himself and the people that he cares about.
You can handle the tough times and get it done and not crumble. And yes, we have emotions. We are emotional, but we don't overreact, so to speak. What's interesting, we were up in Cooperstown, New York for like the baseball tournament my son was in, and it was awesome. But the thing that really hit me, and I'm not sure how the government works with all the unemployment stuff, but everybody up there was short staffed. So our hotel, I didn't realize we were supposed to check in at 3 p.m. We got there at 12 noon. The lady at the front desk was frazzled. She's like, I'm not taking early check-ins. I'm short staffed. She was doing the laundry. She was also working the front desk, taking reservations. I was like, okay, no worries. Restaurants didn't have enough waiters and waitresses. So if I wanted to get takeout instead of eating at the restaurant, like one night I was alone, my wife and I were kind of going back and forth to New Jersey. They're like, we're not doing takeout. We can't do it. We've got people here. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm still paying you. I'm giving you a really good tip and you're making food. It's the same kind of thing, but they were so frazzled by it. And then I was at a Jersey Mike's to pick up subs for the whole baseball team. And there were two guys working and they told me that people were walking out quitting because it got too busy. It was like too much for them. And it kind of blew my mind at how work gets a little stressful. And so they were making the subs they quit. And the one guy goes into the back because they ran out of whatever kind of bread. And the other guy says, I think he just walked out. I think he just quit. And I was like, no, I think he's just going to get, more bread. But the way he said it showed me that this has happened before. Right. It gets tough. They leave and they quit. And then when I was at the hotel, the guy was like, why does anybody want to work anyway? They're getting paid to not show up to work. Yeah. Now, I don't know if that's still going on, but I don't want money for doing nothing. And local senators came and visited my gym in the beginning of COVID. And they're like, you need to take that loan. They're like, we need you to take that loan. And I said, I don't want that loan. I'm going to find a way to make my own money. They're like, no. It's important that that's how this thing's going through. So I had heard of people who didn't get the loan. And then of course we heard of people getting the loan who didn't actually need the loan, that whole, that government protection plan. But it was just interesting being up in Cooperstown, how people were flustered when it got busy, people were quitting or they were understaffed. And I don't know if they were understaffed because it's just a very rural area. But it was interesting how people were frazzled by those busy times. I feel you got to embrace those busy times and don't let people see you sweat. Sometimes at the high school, like this summer, I had groups, just me. It seemed like we were just shy of 100 athletes with just me. And I always say, you got to command the room. Don't let them see you sweat. Be highly organized. That of course takes time. But yeah, it's just some thoughts on my mind hearing people kind of crumble when they get a little bit busy. You've got,
and that's nothing to crumble about. Like,
into the fire.
It might be challenging for a couple of hours, but it's nothing to crumble about. But the reason they crumble is a couple of reasons. One might be that they've never experienced it before. Yes. And so it becomes overwhelming. Well, that's a failure. That's a failure that they haven't been in any other hardship. And this is the hardest thing they've ever dealt with. They have rush hour at Jersey Mike's. It's like, really? That's what's going to destroy you. I get being frustrated, but you just got to work through it. The other thing, and this is, I think, more the root cause, is that these individuals probably don't have great father figures in their lives. I know that's a big assumption. I know it'd be hard for some people to see how I could jump from that to fathers not being in their lives. But you know what? Fathers represent a focus, a determination, a grit, a discipline that is much needed. And unfortunately, there's a rise in fatherless homes. I grew up without a permanent father figure in my life. And so my mother did the best that she could, but she would readily admit that she couldn't do everything. She couldn't be the man of the house or the father because she's the mother. She's a woman. And so she got me involved in sports. That's why I got involved in sports, because she knew I needed to be around other men. And yeah, that's a failure of society. This family breakdown where these young men and young women are not getting a strong, stable, disciplined, focused father figure in their life. And we're going to continue to see more of this as that problem continues to permeate society.
This even with when a father reaches out to me who's got like a younger son or daughter and says, how do I get my kids involved in this training and fitness? I go, you have to do it. And if you're not doing it, they don't think it's normal. And so, you know, when we moved to this house, my son was 1.5 years and my daughter was just shy of 3 years old. And so in the garage was a climbing rope, a set of rings, and some kettlebells. And so they would see me sprinting up and down the street, carrying kettlebells, doing pull-ups, push-ups, jumping on and off the stairs. And then my kids brought out this gymnastics mat. And you'd see them like doing things that they thought they were exercising, you know, they were mimicking me. They thought, they realized, oh, it's normal for my dad to do strong things, to train himself. And I've always said, like, not everybody who's strong with weights is strong in life. And I've certainly had my shortcomings, but I take these lessons and apply them to the tough times. When COVID happened, I had to furlough my coaches. I would work at the high school and coach 6-7 groups. Then I would zip to my gym, coach another 4 groups. In a day, it was 200 plus kids I was coaching for months and months and months on end. And I think that, where do I get that from? I learned it through my coaches, through wrestling, through my dad telling me, if you want to go out with your friends, you're mowing the lawn. That's how it gets done. And no, I'm not paying you to mow the lawn. That's part of the deal for living here. And these are things you'll do in this
dinner
house
tonight.
Yeah, that's almost like the trade. And so some kids have a dad at home who comes home, sits on the couch, goes right to the alcohol, or just they worry about their own social life and don't, you know, I'm prefacing this by not saying I'm some perfect man, but I know a lot of dads, they're always looking for the easy way, or, hey, when can we go out and get a drink together? When your son sees that and they think it's normal to drink every Friday and Saturday, they think it's normal to just come home from work and plop down and call it a day and to not be involved. And I think that has a negative impact on kids, without a doubt.
Yeah. I mean, you as a father or a mother, you're creating a culture in your family.
Correct.
In your classroom, every engagement, every encounter, every situation, you're creating a culture, and you don't get to say you're not. Like, you don't get to opt out of creating a culture.
Correct.
And so what kind of culture are you creating? Are you creating one of weakness and dependency and laziness, or are you creating one of discipline and clarity and focus and strength? So you have to be more intentional. You know, you said something interesting too. You said, not everybody who's strong in the gym is strong in life. I agree with that. I would also add that everybody who's weak in the gym is weaker in life than they could be.
100%.
So if you're physically weak, then 100% chance that you are weaker in other aspects of your life. So there may not be a direct correlation between strength in the gym and strength in life, but there is a direct correlation between weakness in life and weakness physicality.
Yeah, you need to do things that are hard, that test you, that challenge you, because I feel naturally they're just going to be a carryover in your life. And it's been, you know, I want to close out with this. You know, my buddy Jay is speaking at your event, and I've noticed his kind of from learning from you, just a different demeanor, the involvement with the kids. He brought down his 2 boys to Summer Strong. Like, he does things with the family. I saw recently for his birthday, they went to like 2 different concerts, and it's just interesting and awesome to see the things he's learned from you. I know he's also kind of climbed the ranks in his career. And so, so it's been awesome. And to see those lessons learned in a close friend is really cool. So Ryan, we've gone on for an hour. I tried to shut it down by 10 minutes late. can people still sign up for your event, or did you sell out this event?
Every event we had, the rest of the events this year are completely sold out, but
Nice.
just jump online, connect with me on social, sign up for our newsletter at orderofman.com. And when our event dates for 2022 in the spring go live, you'll be the first to know about it.
So no events, right? The winter's pretty rough up by you.
Yeah, I'm not going to do it this year, but I might earlier in 2022, because we don't really we're not completely through winter until April, maybe even May some years.
Mm-hmm.
But I do want to do a winter event, but we're going to do some late spring, early summer events, fall events next year. And then I think in 2022, 23, we're going to do a winter event as well. So
cool.
That should be cool as well. And
I want to mention also, we've got friends, this podcast, I'm partnered up with Sornex. You work with Origin, and awesome to see their evolution and their growth.
They're blowing up.
Yeah, it's really cool. What have you, any big lessons learned from Pete and Brian with the growth of Origin and Jocko Fuel, and any big lessons working with those guys?
Yeah, I mean, Pete is a visionary. He's always got the next and newest idea, but it's really cool to see somebody who thinks like that. Cause I know a lot of people who dream, but they don't ever do anything.
He does.
With it. They've got big ideas, but he actually moves forward on these things. And the other thing that he's really good at doing is putting the right people in the right places so that stuff moves forward. And that's really been a great learning experience for me, because I pride myself on being capable in all aspects of life, but within my business, particularly when it comes to this conversation, because, I want to do it all, right? I want to make sure it gets done and it gets done right. And I want to do it all. And what I've realized through watching him and observing is that if I want to grow to the level that we want to grow to, it would be impossible for me to do it on my own. And so I've spent a lot of time over the past 12 months, bringing in the right people, creating some organizational structure, delegating tasks and responsibilities. And I've noticed that as I have done that, we have continued to grow exponentially. And I imagine we will continue to do that as I bring the right people in who can do it better than I can and free me up time to do something I really want to focus on. Yeah, like podcasts like this and things like that.
I was thinking that as I watched Pete's story, I'm like, Pete is not stitching the shoes together. No, he comes up with the idea and he's got the vision. And I think you're right. Like, I've taken myself off of the floor quite heavily at my training facility. That's really hard for me to do that. But if I want to grow the online and impact people all around the world, and I don't like missing my kids' sports. So I was able to go to Cooperstown Friday through a Tuesday or Wednesday. My daughter's now in tennis. I could see a lot of those things. So that stuff's important. So for everybody listening, check out Ryan at orderofman.com. On Instagram is Ryan Michler, and Order of Man podcast as well. And I want to thank everybody for listening, and also thank our partners. We've got Sornex and Origin of Maine. So that's it. Ryan, hang tight while I shut this down, my brother. Just hang tight.